just
Really?
well, the thing is I really love it as a form of transportation.
Start from the beginning of that, because that's an amazing.
Okay.
So cycling is the way, huh?
Well, actually, I was just saying a second ago that I'm not really interested in cycling as a sport. What interests me about cycling is, first of all, we only have so many options in terms of transportation in life. We have walking, we have horseback or another animal, we have bicycles, we have cars or trucks or whatever, and we have planes, helicopters. That's about it. And so I look at cycling as kind of a compromise. I'd prefer to travel on foot or by horse, because at least with a horse, you have an intimate relationship. It's a living thing. You have to respect that. You can't push its limits. With a machine, it also has its limits, but they're much more abstract. You can break a machine and fix it. A horse, if you break it, you can't fix it. So I don't look at cycling as sort of a sport in that way. I just look at it as a very, very efficient way of transporting yourself and one of the better options that I had, I guess.
But when you ride in cars, at least for me, there's something about the balance, something about using your own balance, and also gliding.
I like it. Don't get me wrong.
Gliding or coasting, or
I feel like
something about.
I do like speaking of bicycles, I have gotten to the point where I've developed an appreciation for it. The mechanical side, the simplicity, but more it's the alternative. Bicycling gives us a sustainable alternative to fossil fuel-based transportation, although, of course, a bicycle is completely made with fossil fuel power. But that being said, you probably can, if you treat your bike right, make it up after 25 years. But it takes a while. So those are issues we have to figure out, and there probably are more sustainable ways of making bicycles out of natural materials that maybe don't last as long, but are still functional. And maybe you make it out of bamboo, and bamboo grows really fast, and so by the time your bike wears out, another piece of bamboo has grown to the size you can make another bike. I don't know. But things like that, I think that maybe the idea that things need to last forever is kind of an idea that comes from the Industrial Revolution, and we should look at renewable resources, and in terms of maybe, for instance, building materials. If you're using trellises for your garden and you're using them out of bamboo, or you're using some type of branches or whatever, if they grow at the same rate that they rot out, then that's fine, as opposed to using some type of metal or treated wood, that may last longer, but also may use chemicals, may damage the environment, or just may not be necessary. So yeah, I'm really big on the idea of appropriate technology. And all this is wrapped up in, of course, my studying of permaculture in the past few years, and I have a lot more to learn, especially in the practical application and the design science, because that's what permaculture is more than anything else. It's a design science, and it talks about why can an agriculturalist graduate without understanding the fundamentals of design? Why can a horticulturalist or a silviculturalist or all these people who produce our food, why don't they need to understand the fundamentals of design like an architect or an engineer does? Because these things are important in terms of being energetically efficient. And so I'm going to go back to school, and that's what I want to do. I want to learn about design science and see if I can wrap my mind around that. And I really believe that's the future. It's a low energy future. It's a passive energy future. And it doesn't have to be looked at as a sacrifice. It can be looked at as actually a more fulfilling way to live. Yeah, maybe we can't eat strawberries in winter, but they don't taste good in winter anyway because they come from California. They taste like water.
True.
True.
Yeah. Well, the way I see it is, if they make the plastic, what they do make out of plastic, if they use the right plastics and make them so that they last a long time, there are so many single-use things that are 99% of the things.
We were talking before about transitions.
Yeah, and plastics that are used righteously, it's one of the most wonderful resources, oil, if it were used for medicine in a very efficient way, and you considered it black gold. If you considered it black gold and you didn't throw it away or burn it to move from one place to the other.
I mean, when you really look at it, fossil fuel is the most valuable, energetically amazing material probably in the history of the world in terms of humanity. And I think we need to value that and use it to adapt to energy descent. Eventually we need to get off of it because it's non-renewable. Once it's gone, and we won't have any more. And so I think that the idea, you have a lot of people who have the idea that technology is going to save us, that somehow technology is going to allow us to continue to live the same consumptive lifestyle that we live now, high energy lifestyle that we live now indefinitely. And I think that that's just energetically and physically impossible. And I think the literature shows that, the science shows that, and that really, no, it's not about that, it's about learning to live with less. And nature gives us, nature and pre-industrial civilizations as well as indigenous civilizations, they give us all the roadmaps, all the blueprints, they're already there. This isn't some kooky new age thing, this is taken from history, it's taken from right now, and you know, it's just synthesizing and putting them in a modern language. That's what permaculture is, and that's what I love about it. I think it gives me hope. It's a positive way of revolution, of going forward, as opposed to getting all negative about things, which I have a tendency to do as well. I mean, when you look at it, the political arena, you start getting cynical, and we can't look at that. It's got to be grassroots. It's got to be bottom-up change. There's never been any other type of change. For me, that's it. It's just self, family, community, region, always keeping in mind global and you know, the big picture to understand how it all works. But we've really got to focus on the grassroots and local, because if we don't start there, we never get anywhere, I think. Anyway, and I was impressed by Boulder. I think that there's a lot of interesting people, a lot of creative things going on, although I did get the feeling, just being there a few hours, that gentrification has changed Boulder a lot, that it has probably forced a lot of the lower income people to the outskirts. That's just my impression, and that's what's happened in Portland, Oregon as well. And you know, you can almost, go ahead.
So, I mean, the classic question, a classic perspective. You've seen some people without a lot of money on this trip, and some people with money. You've seen the travelers. How do you gauge the difference in happiness levels between those who have and those who haven't?
Ooh, well, that's a tough question, because
in a lot of ways, what's happening here is the material world, people trying to buy, you know, by fun and by spiritual entertainment, spiritual, even spiritual elevation at the cost of a lot of resources. And what do you think it's from the permaculture?
I think fundamentally, I have a feeling that fundamentally, if you're consuming more than you need, there's an imbalance there, and that's got to affect happiness in a negative way. I think if you have too much, you don't appreciate things as much. If you have access to ice cream every day and it's not a seasonal thing, if you have fruits and vegetables, if you can eat all your favorite foods all the time of the year, it loses some of its value. So I think that's got to affect happiness and satisfaction, being less satisfied. Because if you have everything, you just don't appreciate things as much, I think. I mean, and I feel like the poor people, wow, they smile a lot and they act very positive on the outside, but I think in Latin America, you get the feeling that they're hurting, and they resent they know the history. They know the history of the Western world and how we've exploited their resources and how our affluence is at the cost of their poverty. And that hurts, and that's hard to deal with. But we got to move forward, and so I think that consumption